I can't hear.
Laura, they're muted right now. Once it starts, you'll be able to hear.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And will he keep a campaign promise to nominate the first black woman to the court? The confirmation battle ahead. Also tonight, the U.S. formally rejecting Russia's top security demands amid fears of an invasion of Ukraine. Russia threatening retaliation as it steps up its war games. Richard Engel inside Ukraine. The new subvariant of Omicron to watch in the U.S. where they're calling it a stealth Omicron. It comes as cases and hospitalizations fall, but deaths rise to the highest level in nearly a year. And the new study of the 2 and 3 cases may now be reinfections. What do we need to know? The deep freeze in the Midwest as a powerful nor'easter takes aim at parts of the East. How long they're tracking it all. The Federal Reserve signaling an interest rate hike is coming soon.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening. Once again, the fallout to the look ahead at the political.
What's up?
There you go. So I think we're live. Hello, everybody. If you happen to be watching us on Zoom or on channel 4, thanks for being here. We appreciate it. I'm Sam Feifel. I'm the chair of the board. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is a workshop, so we don't need to declare a quorum. We're not going to be voting on anything, but looks like everybody is here. So thanks everybody for making time once again. Our upcoming meetings, we're going to have another of, actually, I think we just decided that the February 9 budget workshop is going to be a finance committee meeting, right? Yeah, so we are, unless something happens and we're not able to give all the presentations today, we don't need another budget workshop on the 9th. I think we're gonna have a finance committee meeting. You guys know about that, right?
We talked about it.
Yeah, I think so. I'm just trying to keep track of all the emails that I sent today. So why don't we get right into the business of this meeting, which is hearing annual department reports. I'm assuming they're ready to go in the order of the agenda. If there's any change, just let me know. It's not important to me. But first up, I have technology. I think that's Megan Sensi. And maybe we should just check people on Zoom. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine, Sam.
Awesome. All right, Megan, why don't you take it away?
I'm on the phone. No.
All right. So we have had some great recognitions. Brett, can you move that slide forward for me, please? One more. There we go. So, yes.
I think we're going to have to turn up the volume a bit. It's hard to hear you a bit.
Probably just the TV needs to be adjusted.
Yeah,
you're coming through the owl. Hold on.
Yeah.
Okay, let me know when to go.
All right, try that, Megan.
How is this? Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, beautiful.
All right. Okay. So this year we put in all new security camera servers at all schools, which is great. So we're starting to make some progress in handling some of the security issues we've had and concerns I've had. since I started. We also have network monitoring in place, which is huge for the district, especially with where cybersecurity is, with all the ransomware, malware incidents that happen. These are two big things that I was able to accomplish within this last year. So those are pretty huge. Brett, you can go forward. So last year's goals, awesome thing. We have one-to-one devices now, pre-K through 12. Prior, we were only third grade through 12. This was with COVID, with the CRF funds, we were able to make this work, and it's been phenomenal. Having those one-to-one devices for all kids is great, and it's really benefited us, especially through COVID. And I think even once we're past COVID, it will just become what we continue to do in the future. Over the last year, I did a lot of structural upgrades. We have a firewall, managed switches, which means I can view the whole network from outside. I can see if anything's working, not working. I can see if anything's down, if there's anything I need to be concerned about. I can see it from anywhere, and it's fantastic. It allows us to stay on top of things, make sure everything's working right, make sure everything is working efficiently. We have new cabling in the schools, which has increased the speeds of the internet into all of our schools. We have a new telephone system, which was huge. Before, we had just very old phone lines in the buildings. Our classrooms did not have phones that could actually call out. They could call the intercom in the office. Now all of our classrooms have phones. So not only has it been a huge benefit for teachers and staff needing to contact parents and stuff like that, they can also call if there's an emergency. So that has been huge. It's worked really well. It may have given me a lot more gray hairs getting it installed, but it's been fantastic since the install has been done. It's also saved the district a lot of money. And we've moved a lot of our servers from in-house to cloud hosted, which is huge again for security measures. So we've had some really good results with all of those things. You can go forward, Brett. So non-instructional technology, we were able to move our ed techs to the same devices that our students have, which was something that was really important to them. They wanted to be able to help the students and support them with their devices when they're in the classroom helping. And so we were able to do that. All of our ed techs have the same iPads with keyboard case and pen and mouse. We also were able to deploy a lot more devices to food service, bus garage, facilities, which has allowed access from a lot more access to technology in the district when we use it so much more now. That has been great and very appreciated within the district. Another big thing we did last year was we did a department reorganization. This has been huge. It's allowed, we now have, we moved 4 grade levels with one-to-one devices that we support. We now have a district-wide phone system that we support. Our networks are now completely in-house and not supported by MLTI anymore. We have so much more in-house now that we take care of, that without this department restructure, things, we would just not be able to be an efficient department and keep things up. So that's been huge. You can go forward, Brett. So this year's goals were to really focus on getting an integrated, comprehensive technology-based security system. So cameras, servers, video retention, network monitoring. We've been able to upgrade all the camera servers, which is huge, because the problem we were having before with the servers we had is that we might have a week worth of video. And a lot of times when an incident's realized, it's past a week. And so we wouldn't have that data. And now we don't have that issue at all. The network monitoring is huge because we are able to monitor constantly to make sure there's no attacks on our network or anything else going on. And that's with what is going on right now with cybersecurity and breaches. And this is just huge. And it's something that we definitely need in this to keep doing in this district. And we're starting to come up with a plan for better cameras and camera relocations in the district. You can go ahead, Brett. So challenges, it's a lot of the same challenges as last year. Maintaining high standards for quality control and customer service. So one of the things, when we did the department restructure, we went from having one tech in the district, a technology director, and we had a 0.3 website content manager, and then a couple of ed techs that were helping with devices at high school and middle school. The department restructure has been huge in helping us manage all of our devices, because as I stated before, what we now manage has increased a lot in the last year, especially with COVID. So when we first started, when I asked for the department restructure a couple of years ago, because this is my third year here, I had provided data of what our tech support was in the district versus other districts, and we were way below. The department reorganization definitely helped. Right now though, my 3 techs that I have are 220 days versus full-time year round. So one thing I am looking for next year is to increase them to full-time year round. So the tech ratio for devices is, we have, let's see, our district right now is 644 staff and students to 1 person. And that's not the devices, that's staff and students. Most districts are 545 to 1. So if we moved with the direct me and then 3 full-time technicians, we'd be closer to a lot of the surrounding districts average with techs. So that's what I'm looking for next year, to help continue to support and be efficient in the department with the huge increases over the last year and a half that we've had with devices. I also lost in hiring the 3rd tech last year, I lost my .3 website content manager that got rolled into one of the positions. So another thing is, and that follows with the ensuring form follows function, you know, the devices and the systems we have meet the needs of the department. Can we support those? Right now we're doing really well. We're getting to a place I'd like to be. In the past 3 years, we've made huge security increases. We have gotten so many new devices in the district. All teachers have laptops and iPads. Our students all have brand new iPads. Our ed techs all have brand new iPads. We have so much technology in the district that has helped significantly. And it's huge. We have new networks in the district. Our internet works well. I actually had another district reach out to me today and pretty much say, I want to tap into yours because you never seem to have issues, because everything is working really well, knock on wood. But we've made some significant increases in the last 3 years. It's been great. But I think one thing we need to look at for the future is the financial sustainability. So we were able to use CRF funds last year and purchase all these devices, which is fantastic. Prior to that, we were always using the MLTI program. The MLTI program through the state, the Maine Learning Technology and program, has changed a lot. We did take advantage of it this year for 7th and 8th grade because the devices didn't end up costing the district any money. And we'll probably get 1 grade level of devices next year. But I think in the future, we're going to need to keep an eye on how much the district is going to have to spend to continually support our one-to-one program. And that's keeping that planning. My budget, because of not having MLTI, has dropped a lot, but that's not going to be sustainable. So we really need to continue to focus on how do we have sustainability in our one-to-one program and our devices and our technology in the district when it's become so needed without increasing significantly again. Because we're not going to get another CRF fund like we did last year that allows us to go and replace these devices. It's just, that would be shocking. So I think those are the biggest challenges we have, and that we just need to continue to look forward to in the future. But yeah, we're in good shape right now in the department. Brett, do you want to fast forward one more, please? And then partnerships, the Maine Educational Technology Directors Association. I'm also on the board of that, and I'm the secretary for the group. The ACTM Group, Association of Computer Technology Educators in Maine, the Greater Sebago Educational Alliance, and then I have a lot of positive relationships with a lot of the vendors. I use a lot of vendors and have good relationships with them. So anyone have any questions or information you'd like to hear from me tonight that I didn't go over?
Yeah. Anybody have any questions or comments? I have a couple. So you said the average sort of customers, right, including
Yes.
staff,
Yes.
and, staff or whatever, for lack of a better word,
Yes.
to per person is 545 to 1.
Nope, we are currently 644 to 1. The average of other districts is 545. to 1.
Right, so you just misheard, but yeah, that's what I asked. So the average.
Sorry,
of-
yes.
And where did you get that info?
So me and on the tech directors group, we collect data from other districts about staffing. And so I went with all the surrounding districts to really look at what they have for staff versus what we have.
Do you know, so are those like Cumberland County or just whoever answered, or do you have?
No, mostly Cumberland County. There's a few outside of Cumberland County that are neighboring districts, RSU 16, 17, neighboring districts and Cumberland County. Also, I looked in like Freeport, Yarmouth, a lot of surrounding towns. Wyndham.
That's super helpful information. One thing that I've been thinking about, I think we talked about it last year, but I can't remember where it went, is do we have a data governance policy for internal access to student? I mean, obviously we have FERPA, right?
Yes.
So,
yeah.
That sort of does a lot of but do we have a policy for, because I've looked through, we don't have one on the site, but I didn't know if we maybe have an internal one on, somebody wants to see video of a situation. Do we have like a policy that dictates how that request is made for access to the video, and or how long video is saved for, or if there's an incident around, how long that's archived for? Do we have policies internal around that?
We do not. We have as you know, the FERPA policies. We do not have data governance policies like that in place currently. We are very strict on who gets access to anything like that. It's usually administrators or SRO.
It might be good to formalize that, strict, one person's version of strict versus another person's version of strict might be different. It might be good to have a policy on something like that.
No, that's an excellent point, Sam.
It's just because we're going to get, with this new access control system,
yes,
with the video system, we're going to be able to be super sophisticated about, who came in the door at 8:34, right?
Yes,
and
correct.
That could be, in the wrong hands, that could be used sort of maliciously or whatever, even internally. So I think we might want to, as one of our goals for this year, develop a policy on who can request what data for what reason, that type of thing.
No, that's a fantastic idea. Yep.
Any other thought? Those are the two questions I had.
Just a commentary on that piece. There are, when technology first became ubiquitous, there was a lot of FERPA issues. If there's a behavior issue on a bus and parents wanted to see the video, you could have like 4 or 5 or 8 people looking at video of what's happening. And that was a FERPA violation, because you could be looking at it and you're seeing 20 kids go about their school day. And in this district, when we've had the rare occasions where parents might want to see an incident on a bus or an incident in the cafeteria, the tech departments are very good at blurring other faces and that they don't need to see. So there's 2 good things there. Number one, we don't get a lot of parent requests for that because our kids don't get in trouble. And then number 2, when they do ask, the tech department's really good at protecting FERPA. But having it in policy ensures that it's there. Because you can get, with these sorts of systems, FERPA is one thing as students, but you can do things like, hey, when did XYZ employee show up for work yesterday? Right? Like, we might not want to be cool that a principal could just check that anytime they want, or,
Agreed. Yep.
Really sophisticated, and, I want to make sure someone doesn't say, oh, you can do that, can I do this? And if we don't have a policy in place, there might not be a good decision-making mechanism. So that just with the new system, I want to make sure we're ahead of that.
I agree, Sam.
Any other thoughts or questions? Awesome, Megan. No, that's almost set. I'm going to ask the elementary school. All right, So I guess, Megan, you are all set, and let's.
Thank you,
move on.
everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
Megan.
you.
Have a good night.
Move to special services. Hi, Paula.
Hi, Sam. Hey, everyone.
Good to see you in person. It's been a while.
I know, it's been a long time. It's nice to be back in person, I'll tell you. Never want to be that sick again.
Let's say, don't say those words.
All righty, well, welcome, everybody. We'll go over an overview of how things have been going from the last time we saw each other to now. We've had some really nice recognitions and celebrations over the last year. Last year, we were very fortunate. We were able to bring our kiddos who had 180 minutes or more a day on their IEPs in for 4-day-a-week in-person instruction. So that was very nice. This year, everybody's back to 5-day-a-week in-person instruction. Our teachers and ed techs are just so resilient and flexible. And those are the only words that we can really use to talk about people this year, the resiliency and the flexibility beyond words. This is something that we are very proud of, we as a special education team. Every 3 years, the Maine Department of Education audits special education. They look at the timeliness of your paperwork, the thorough, whether, is it thorough? Is it properly written? Is it I's dotted and T's crossed? Because they are legal documents. We had, and I'm just talking from the state, we had an above average number of accommodations. So I was really proud of staff for that. We had Maine Department of Education come in October, and we were able to finish up our action plan that wasn't due until August of 22. So something I'm really proud of the hard work those educators have done. And with the help of ARA funds, we have hired a full-time third school psychologist. She happens to be have a doctorate in psychology, so it's nice to have someone with a PsyD on staff to make those diagnoses. She can diagnose where the master's levels can only make diagnostic impressions. So it's been nice to add that third person. Okay. Last year, it's very important. Orton Gillingham is a scientific research-based reading theory. It's proven, there's data, it's direct, it's sequential, it's multisensory, and it really does progress. For kiddos who didn't learn to read the way lots of us learn to read, which is kind of just incidental learning, all of a sudden sounds and symbols make sense, they blend together, you can blend them to words to sentences, and sentences have meaning. For many of the children we serve, that learning is explicit. And so they have to be taught that when my eyes see this letter, I need to produce this sound, and I blend them together, and we become readers in a very explicit manner. We were able to spend a day-long workshop making sure that everyone had good basic understanding of Orton Gillingham instruction. And then we make sure that our goals are written in a very systematic, thorough way so that parents understand what their kids are being taught and how they're being taught. And it sounds complicated because reading, my joke is reading really is rocket science. What your brain does is phenomenal when you think about the processes you go through every time your eyes print up off the page. And then social emotional learning has become so very important. So we've got all of our teachers using the CASTLE program, but they're also using First Step and lots of other different programs to help kids feel supported. And really, as important as it is to know the 3 sounds of A, to know that I care. Well, the saying is, kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And in this pandemic, it's become even more important. Right. We're trying out a web-based Orton Gillingham base. I apologize for the acronym, Craig. I meant to fix it. Honest to God, I cut and pasted and, sorry. OG is working Gillingham. Oh, I'm gonna be in the doghouse. But we want to make sure that in case we go fully remote, there are some ways to deliver direct sequential multisensory reading instruction through a remote platform. So we want to make sure that our staff is proficient should we have to go there again. And as we talk about every single year for the last 6 years, we need to be prepared should child development service be dissolved. The can is kicked down the road again. But we stand on the ready because, you know, it won't be September of 22. It very well could be September of 23. So you just got to keep it I have to keep it in the forefront of my brain all the time. Kids are really going through a tough time right now. And as such, we see behavior, but underneath, that's the tip of the iceberg. Underneath the rest of the iceberg that took down the Titanic are all the feelings that cause what we see. So we want to make sure that teachers, and this is a tough part because to really come up with, to operationalize behavioral interventions, we have to know the function of the behavior. So you build a hypothesis and then you test the hypothesis on, is it attention seeking? Is it work avoidance? What might it be? And because we only have 3 psychologists and 35 certified staff, I would like teachers to be able to start building that hypothesis and testing it on their own. So there's where that ongoing professional development to come up with our positive behavior interventions, and then more use of those social emotional learning tools. But that's what I really think our focus needs to be on, helping teachers begin to put together their own, and then in our world, we call it a functional behavioral analysis. So I would like to, I mean, it's something that psychologists would then check and prove further. However, if you're looking at the antecedent, the behavior and the consequence, teachers can be gathering that as they go. Usually get quite this long-winded. So just for a minute. And then again, building that capacity. Does it mean that we increase the speech pathologist who services done school so that pathologist could then be available for the CDS kiddos who, which wouldn't be CDS anymore, they'd be Jeff's preschoolers, and we would be providing that specially designed instruction. And this, I think if I could have bolded this and put it in red, I would have. But recruiting and retaining certified special education and educational technicians, that certainly is a huge challenge for the entire state right now. And we are a good place to work. We've been very fortunate. All of our staff is fully certified. None of them are on conditional certificates. So if we can just keep that up, we'll be in good shape. And we still partner with Child Development Services, with the Maine School for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, vocational rehabilitation, Woodford's Family Services. We work with them to bring in their board certified behavior analysts who work with those functional behavior analysis and put together plans to help shape behavior. Not much going on in my world. Questions, comments, concerns?
Where are we relative to the rest of the state now with the identification?
We hover we're in the hunt. We hover between 17 and 18%.
What's the state average at this point?
Oh, shoot. I bet you it's closer to 20 these days, Will.
We were as high as 25 before Paul got here.
I am quite a guardian of the door.
Not just guarding of the
No,
door.
I mean,
Making sure
I
that kids are
don't
not,
want you to frame it that way. I know
no, I
that,
think what it is that having a disability is a big deal. And labeling a child with a disability is a big deal. And so we need to be 100% sure that there really is a disability before we hang big labels on little children.
I think our response to intervention and our process has been tweaked and improved to the point that we don't have to, err on the side of caution or
Yeah, no,
whatever.
special ed isn't the only game in town anymore, Sam.
Exactly. And I just want to anybody watching, that should be clear, right?
Right, and but it is because we've got really good universal instruction in general education, strong response to intervention, and then from there, and then we do our formal testing through our school psychologists and with our academic evaluation. And we do drill down pretty deeply to make sure that, like I said, hanging big labels on little children, we want to make sure they're real labels.
I kind of have a follow-on to that question in that, we know the kids are not all right? I mean, obviously, there's going to be some sort of psychological impact on living through a global pandemic when you're 9 or whatever. Maybe we have more families that have experienced trauma, or I've had family members die of COVID. I'm sure kids can say the same thing. Is there any data on these kids' traumatic experiences during the pandemic leading to any sort of increase in their, identification as someone
I think
needing
it's
special
too
services?
early in the pandemic to make that. What people have been doing is looking at Katrina as the closest thing to what we've all experienced. And you do see, and that's the piece that's tough, is trying to sift out what is COVID lost learning and what truly is a specific qualifying condition for special education. I think it's gonna take a cycle. We talk about it all the time. But if you look at Katrina, you did see a surge in kiddos who may have always had a processing disorder, but worked really hard. And when they were able to maintain pace with their classmates, and then boom, their world went to heck. And all of a sudden that processing disorder or the hyperactivity or anything else became much more obvious and really interfered with their ability to keep pace.
Can I ask you a question, Paula, that I kind of know 80% of the answer, maybe even 90% of the answer,
Well, I hope I know more than you do.
but it's come up in the press, it's come up in the media. I've actually had 2 parents contact me, asking me what this means. And there is sort of a misunderstanding or misconception of what we mean by social emotional learning. And in this district, we began our professional development formally through the CASTLE program 18 months before the pandemic. Jeff and others had brought it to our attention. And now that the pandemic is here, you look at every school district, they're spending money on social emotional learning. And I had a parent contact me the other day, and their concern was, they're spending all this time on teaching social emotional stuff and they're not getting math and science. So I sort of steered them away from that. And so the social emotional learning is how we better interact with each other and how we're.
Can we help kids identify what it is they're feeling? I mean, I think a lot of times kids don't have names for what they're feeling. And so our job is to help them identify, and it doesn't mean that it's a 2-hour lesson, but it's certainly in the moment, gee, you seem scared, you seem frustrated. How's your tummy feel? Do you have that little volcano that I mean, because we all know it. You all know when you're getting angry. But with time, we learn our tells, So I think that it's important to know that it's more, as much as it's direct instruction, a lot of it is in the moment teaching as well. How'd I do?
I mean, it's okay. It's just, and it's.
And feel free to help me out, team.
Yeah, I just, I think there are the people that I've spoken to, or the people that I've asked, they think of it as a discrete siloed piece, just like math instruction, reading instruction, social studies instruction. And it's sort of more of an awareness, an ability, and a skill set to recognize when a peer or a child or a student or a group of kids.
And to know how to take time and space. I mean, kids need to learn. I need a minute to think about that.
Yeah.
You know, I need a minute to process that. And I think that that is incidental as well as it is our direct instruction through our CASEL curriculum and other, I know Amanda's building uses First Step. And that's a, you know, a 15, 20, 30-minute lesson, but all day long, we talk about
Well, and if you don't mind,
Yeah,
to answer that question, if you think about a student who's sitting in a classroom preparing for a math or a reading lesson, if they are thinking about the anxiety, if they are feeling anxious, if they're feeling frustrated, if they're worried about what's going on with a relative at home who might be sick, or just simply in this case, worried that they might get sick sitting in that classroom because kids are being diagnosed, their attention cannot get to the math lesson, reading lesson, whatever it is for academics they have in front of them. So if you don't help them mitigate that and come to terms with that, or to learn strategies to get through that anxiety or that frustration or that fear, then they won't get to the learning that you want them to learn. And that's, you know, I'm going to talk about it. I'm sure these guys will too. That's what we're battling every day right now. And that's where the pandemic burnout and the pandemic fatigue comes from, is teachers, staff, special educators, all of the people working directly with kids are struggling with that day in and day out to get to the math and the reading, which they really are anxious and feel like they got to get kids to, but they also know that the kids sitting in front of them may not be prepared to do that emotionally at the moment. So that's why that social emotional learning.
Well, it's so important because when you think about how your, you know, brain functions, one part of what we're talking about is working memory. And working memory and the phonological loop and all the other pieces that are important for us to be able to make sense of our learning. If my working memory is so cluttered with, am I gonna get sick? I'm not available for learning.
It's the hierarchy need, right? If you don't have your basic needs taken care of, you can't move up the hierarchy. It's the same thing when we talk about food insecurity for kids. If they don't have full stomachs, if they're not sure where their next meal comes from, or they think when they get home there won't be food for them, how are they going to focus to do the learning you're asking them? Yep.
I'm glad you brought that up, because, you know, I think sometimes, you know, there's this feeling like, oh, we never heard about social emotional learning before. Is this some brand new thing? And it's not a brand, you know, we've been talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs since I was in college, you know, and it's just sometimes we, you know, the nomenclature changes, but, you know, all along, we have been, you know, trying to address the emotional needs of children to help them learn better. We just get more and more sophisticated as it goes, and, you know, has kind of been rebranded as the social emotional learning. Would you agree that that's kind of accurate?
Yeah.
And as one of the oldest ones in the room, I sure do.
Yeah. Because, you know, it's like, you know, I've had similar, a couple of parents come to me and like, you know, what's this brand new social emotional learning? I'm like, just psychology, you know, it's like, you know.
Well, and you put it with the fact that we're once in a generation or once in a century type of circumstance that kids are facing that none of us faced as kids, right?
Right.
To have to do and deal with as we learn. That adds to that piece, and that makes the importance of social emotional learning, brings it to the front more and more for parents.
And it's been, like, I remember when I was in school, they talked a ton about whole child,
Yeah.
you know, and now I never hear that as much, but, you know, it's just sometimes there's just a different need. I just wanted to ask like a staffing question. We see, you know, ed tech vacancies, obviously on our agendas or on our staffing reports. Like, just how short-handed are we?
As any good rabbi would say, it can always be worse. So we are currently only down, and there's where my Pollyanna shows, we are only down 8 ed techs.
8. What is the day-to-day impact of being down 8 ed techs?
Everyone works even harder. Everyone has it. People are, when I talked about the flexibility and resilience, it is, we've got the occupational therapist going in and helping with an English language arts lesson, followed by an occupational therapy session because we are down a teacher that day. We've got an educational technician going into 4 different classrooms through the course of the day to make sure that we've got kids, the highest kids' needs covered. It's just completely, people are absolutely turning themselves inside out to make it work.
I don't have any doubt about that. Are we compensating them for extra work?
Beyond their day, yes. Anything that they do beyond their day, they're being compensated.
Okay. Yeah, we're not just paying them a salary and asking them to work twice as many hours.
Oh, gosh, no.
Okay.
No, we've approved all requested overtime and needed overtime. Ed Tech's doing bus duty before school, after school,
After
some
school,
lunch
I've got-
duty, and we're paying them overtime.
If we've got a kiddo, a young child who may not be able to access everything during the day, we've got a couple of ed techs who are providing an hour or so after school, and they're being paid for that. But just making sure that we're meeting the needs of our kids, but nobody's asked to work for free.
One of the problems with ed techs is it's a springboard to a different career. You know, maybe a fraction of our ed techs become ed techs because that's what they want to do. They're happy to stay there 5 or 10 years. But I started out as an ed tech. I graduated at Christmas. I had my certificate at Christmas. I did it for a semester, and then I got my real teaching job. And so I think we have 3.
And you have to give them, you know, I mean, you wish them the best. I mean, that's what they went to college for, so
We lost 3 second semester. They
they
got
landed real
jobs,
teaching
yeah,
jobs.
yeah.
And not that ed techs are real teaching jobs, but they landed a certified teaching position,
It's a,
paid.
it's a career jump for sure.
All right, anybody on Zoom have any questions? Just, unmute yourself and pipe up if so, because we can't see your face.
Oh, good, Sam.
Thanks, Missy. All right,
All right.
anyone else in the room? Thanks, Paula.
You're welcome. Good to see you all. Take good care of yourselves.
I think next up is, I have Memorial, but I don't care.
I think in the slideshow. it was made up.
Okay, like I said, we're flexible.
All right. Didn't mean to jump on anybody's.
I'm just reading the agenda here.
Leapfrog the group. Hi, everyone. Good evening. It's been a while since we've been together. So recognition and celebration. Teacher, staff, and student work to return to 5-day week in-person instruction. We went from a hybrid / remote model last year to everybody being back in the same room. 10 kids at a time to 20 plus kids at a time. And that takes a lot of work on everybody's part to relearn processes and procedures and how to work together. And also to do it safely during a pandemic where you keep as much space as you possibly can. And folks have worked really hard to make that happen. And I feel like it's been a pretty successful year in doing that. So kudos to all of them. We were able to purchase last year through grant money, Naturescape playground equipment. And we purchased it back in January. We weren't able to get it in, but we have put it in this fall. And so back behind Dunn School, behind where the traditional pre-K playground is, we have gone into the woods and we have created a nature playground with massive logs that they can go run through, and outdoor kitchens and stepping stones and all sorts of wonderful things that they can use and play with, and gets us outside more and creates a bigger space for them and allows them to play in a more natural environment. So they can actually move between the 2 playgrounds. And so that's been fantastic. Our general education social work, we just talked quite a bit about social emotional learning. It's been something that we've been asking for a while. It was a great opportunity through grant money to put that in for a couple of years. I would say that has been a tremendous success. At Dunn School, we have Abby Beaumont, who was my one-year interim fill-in guidance counselor last year. She's actually an LCSW, so she took that position. And we have her 2 days a week at Dunn. She's actually in the building 3 days a week, but 1 full day, then 2 half days. She splits her time between us and the other 2 schools. And timing couldn't have been better. And so her caseload for Dunn School is pretty much full. And we've had some really high need situations this year, and she's helped us navigate those, not only within the school and helping kids with lower level needs who might need that social work piece, but also we've had some cases where we've had to coordinate with the state, and she has been tremendous. So huge thank you to you and to the commitment to that piece of social work. And then, you know, I just wanted to give a shout out to Transportation and Food Service Department for their flexibility and perseverance. I mean, you know, you run a school and you think about educating kids, but if you can't get them there, and we all know the difficulties with that, and you can't feed them, and we just said if kids don't have full bellies, they can't learn, and they have worked, you know, miracles with short staff in both departments. And it really, without them, we couldn't do what we do to educate kids. So I just wanted to give them a quick shout. Next slide, Brett, thanks. So results of last year's goals. So one of our goals, obviously, was to establish and maintain a healthy environment for students and staff during the pandemic. And I think we did a really good job of that. We had the hybrid instruction piece. We had very few, I mean, I looked at it the other day. We had as many cases in a week this year in one of these most recent weeks than we had all of last year with our kids in school. Obviously, there's a number of reasons for that, including the transmissibility of the current strain and that kind of stuff, and the fact that we've got more kids in. But we did a tremendous job educating kids last year in that hybrid model, and it wasn't ideal, of course, but it was in-person instruction, so that was quite successful. Maintain high expectations despite the barriers created by the pandemic. Each grade level last year in the 3rd and 4th grade identified 10 essential standards in each content. It really felt like we only had them in person 2 days a week. And so we needed to, instead of having that wide amount of standards and shallow work in each of them, we wanted to condense it and get much deeper into the most important standards. So we went through a process of identifying 10 standards in math and 10 standards in language arts that we felt like we really wanted our kids to focus on for the year. And that helped us to really kind of laser focus into the work that they were going to do in a limited amount of time in person. Students and staff implemented the Google Classroom as the primary learning platform for remote hybrid learning. That was quite successful, but always a challenge when you're talking about 8, 9, and 10-year-olds and a learning platform and having them try to be independent. But they did a really nice job. The teachers worked tremendously hard to put those Google Classrooms together and make them easy to access, easy to navigate, and then engaging. So those days that kids weren't with us, they had that to go to, and that was great. And some of the stuff the specialists did for remote instruction, because all of our specials, art, music, PE, all those things were remote, and it was incredible to sit in on some of those classes and see just the teaching that was going on in that environment. So kudos to them as well. And then loss of 5-day-a-week instruction did impact student learning, but progress was still made, right? So we didn't have them for as much time. Our day length of day was shorter. The number of days we had them in person, they spent a lot of time working independently or with parent support. And so we, the progress that we are able to make with them is not what it would have been in a typical year. Cultivate, foster social emotional well-being, and we've talked quite a bit about that already. The CASEL framework was used to support students and staff, and we implemented a staff support group that was led by our school counselor, and so they met after school. It was a stipend position that we supported for the school counselor, and it was for any staff members who wanted to come and talk about what was going on for them in relation to the pandemic at school and those sorts of things. We averaged about 7 people session, which was great. And the log seats that we have out in front of the building, oftentimes you see them out there sitting in those, having a conversation with the counselor and the people who were attending. And I feel like people felt that that was a worthwhile opportunity for them to kind of
That's the
process.
first time we've heard about something like that at a building. Is that happening in all of our buildings?
It is not happening this year. It did happen last year. Yeah, so that was part of last year's goal. It was a stipend that we created, and there was one at every building. And because they were, anybody who wanted to attend, some buildings had more attendance than others, and I think at Dunn it was pretty successful. So, yeah. And then an update on this year's goal, again, implementing systems and standard operating procedures for in-school instruction, in-person instruction during the pandemic. Obviously, now you have to alter those a little bit because you have 20 kids in the classroom rather than 10 at a time. So some of our procedures and our systems have changed, but still feel like we've been pretty successful and our kids have been fantastic. We do not get pushback on masks. We do not see a lot of pushback on spacing that we're trying to do, although 8, 9, and 10-year-olds want to hang on each other. So it's a constant reminder, but it's not, there's not a lot when you're asking them to kind of give some space. They don't push back on that. They've tried really hard to do that work so that they can stay healthy, and they're conscious of it. They know why those procedures and operating procedures are there. So it's been good. Develop and implement the new general ed social work program, and I already kind of spoke about that in the recognition piece, but that is going very well at Dunn School. Next slide, Brett. Foster a year's growth for students in a year's time in math and reading. It's measured by the NWEA, and so. We spoke about the challenges when we were talking about CASEL and SEL. And I think, I had a conversation with the staff recently and there's some fatigue and frustration and a lot of times what they're describing is taking 2 steps forward in instruction and then a step back, right? Because every day that they come in, they don't know who's going to be in front of them. And they might have a student, they might have their full class, they might have half their class, depending on earlier in the year when we were doing quarantines, or kids who have COVID and now are in quarantine, with that close contact piece. And so you prepare your lessons, you prepare your units, you teach them, but you never know who's going to be in front of you. So if you teach to half your class what you had planned, and then the other half comes back, and then some other kids are out, it's like you move forward, but then you got to move back, and you got to circle back to what you taught, and that's not typical. Obviously, in a non-pandemic situation, you prepare your units and your lessons and you move through the year, excuse me, and you have a student here or there who's out and misses some things, but not to the volume you have right now. So our goal is really to take kids where they are and move them a year forward. And whether that's at grade level, above grade level, or below grade level, or just getting into the grade level content that they should be at, it really is a daily struggle. So, and then renewed work in developing the multi-tiered system of support team and school-wide protocols. That was something that was taking place with Karen Roby a couple of years ago. When I was at the middle school, we were doing it district-wide with Karen, and then that kind of took a back seat, but we started that work again. We have 2 staff leaders who attend trainings with Karen and are building that system again at Dunn School. And then as the administrator, I'm involved in that work as well. And we're getting ready to kind of reintroduce that to the Dunn staff. And that's happening really district-wide, but that's some good work, and it goes along really well with our response to intervention behavior model, because it sets up kind of that universal instruction, that universal expectation piece for all students, and then we can build the response to behaviors based on that. And then current challenges, staffing, specifically ed tech openings, which Paula talked about, and substitutes. And I will say that the 5 permanent substitute positions that we recently got approved, we hired ours for Dunn School within the last week that person started. I think that's going to be huge. I would love to see it. I'll put in a plug now. I'd love to see that continue forward in some way in the future, because I think just knowing that I have somebody who's going to come to the building every day and I can put them where I need them, it is really helpful. Because right now, prior to this, if we had a teacher out and we didn't have a sub, the ed tech from my response to intervention program that is assigned to that team, because they're kind of the 4th adult, the 4th teacher on that team, became the teacher for the day, and we just moved the ed tech into the substitute position. That obviously takes away from intervention, takes away from student support, and this position allows us to, as much as possible, not have to do that.
Can you just remind us that position is funded at step 0?
The substitute position, it's funded at the long-term sub rate. So substitutes get a certain rate, but if they're in the same position after the 10th day, on the 11th day, they get a higher rate.
Yeah.
We're paying for that at the higher rate.
For
so
some reason,
it's
I
one-
thought that
it's
was
one-
the same as step 0.
Yeah, I don't know the equivalent. It's
created-
140 a day.
We created a non-bargaining position that will terminate in June. So they will get $140 a day, and they get the benefits package, but that all ends June 30. So they're being compensated pretty well.
Yeah.
But we need them.
Yes, we do. And so that's been very helpful. Language arts audit. We have been looking to do a language arts audit at Dunn School for a number of years. And we started talking about this the year before I went back to the middle school. And we had budgeted for it. It kind of got put on hold for that year. And then we went out on the pandemic. And now, based on everything that's been going on, we haven't done any more work on that. That's very much in our thinking that we need to do an audit of our language arts programming and how we're going about teaching. It's not necessarily about a specific language arts program like they adopted in the middle school. It's more about the teaching strategies and the different methods we're using, having somebody come in, look at that, give us some feedback on it, and then make some decisions based on that, whether that means adopting a program or whatever. That work still needs to happen. We've got great language arts instruction. We just have to look at the cohesiveness of it around the building. So still looking to do that. It's difficult to pile that on though right now. Consistent in-person instruction for individual students in classrooms. And again, that's that point. You never know who you're going to have in front of you on a particular day. Loss of traditional enrichment activities. Our family nights, we used to have a STEM night and a literacy night. We used to have an author in. Our field trips, Bryant Pond overnight for 4th grade. We did have Bryant Pond come in and do their team building with us this fall because they could do it up in the orchard. So they worked with one team a day for 5 days. And that was great. But most of what we do for enrichment, and that was a big part of Dunn School, we've lost. And then again, the day-to-day uncertainty of pandemic fatigue and anxiety. And then our partnerships, Pineland campus, our facility use, we're about to go over. They've built a hockey rink right next to the tennis courts. This is the 2nd year they've had that. Our phys ed classes are going to go over there for the next 2 weeks, next week and the week after, and skate. We have purchased enough skates to outfit a whole class at a time, plus helmets. We have lots of Home Depot buckets that we can stack up to push around the ice if you're a new skater. We've even built some supports. And so for PE class for 2 weeks, they'll go up and skate. We did it last year during our winter carnival, and it was a huge hit. So we decided to purchase skates and make it part of the PE. So Pineland gives us that opportunity, along with all the other stuff we do over on their facility. Rec department and local daycares have been really important to us in partnering with them because our kids are spending so much time there, especially when we go remote, things like that. Bryant Pond, again, they came to us in the fall. Russell Memorial Schools, you know, the work that we do together, the 3 elementary schools is vital. And then Child Development Services, as Paula mentioned, they are an integral part of our pre-K program. Any questions? Yeah.
There are a couple, actually. So you said social worker, you've got currently 2 days, but one is a full day and then 2 half days.
Yes, so she's with us Monday for half a day, Tuesday full day, half a day on Friday. Yep.
And her caseload's full.
The caseload is just about full. Yep, I think we're gonna have one off her caseload, so she might have some spots.
Is that typical or is that?
Yeah,
Caseload
we have
more
this.
now than what it has been?
Well, it might be a little bit, but we have needed this position for a long time, and there has been a need there. We've always had special education social workers, but if you didn't have an IEP, you couldn't access them. And our guidance counselors are really, the school counselor role is really intended to do short-term work that, you know, may happen over a few sessions, right? And it's really around their own emotional regulation and things like that. Whereas a social worker is a more clinical position and can dive into some more heavy duty topics and family type of things. And in the absence of community resource in that area, it has really helped us. It's something that the school counselors and social workers in the district have been talking about for a long time. And it doesn't replace the outside community resources, because when you get into a real clinical situation, school-based social workers should not be getting into that, like real trauma therapy and substance abuse therapy and those types of things. But they can do things that impact school in relation to some of those. So we've needed the position for a long time. I don't know. Yes, I would say there's probably a few more cases based on the current condition, but it's been a big need for a while.
And the other question I had is the playground. I know you and I spoke about it before, but is that still dirt out back? A big area.
Yes, Diane and I have talked about that. Yeah. Yeah, and that's very much on the radar. I would like to have that. Yeah.
The 4th grade boys like the.
Yeah, well, 4th grade boys like grass too. So I don't think it's gonna matter which it is, but I think it'll be a lot nicer if it's grass. Yeah.
I'm not gonna relitigate the dirt versus grass decision-making.
I'm gonna use myself from that discussion.
It's a little
because I
bit of
have
a sensitive
very,
topic.
Apparently I brought up something.
Well, we were told that it definitely had to be dirt because the grass was not sustainable. And
Yes,
I
we
said,
were.
are you sure? That seems insane. And we were sure that that was definitely the way to go. And so that's what we did. So to hear now that it needs to be grass makes me a little
I would just
salty.
like to clarify for the record that I was not on that side of the discussion. I was on your side.
As I said, I'm not going to relitigate.
Of
As someone who coached some miserable 6-year-old softball on that field with big giant.
Well, and I will say that the work that was done there to crown the field so that it drained better. Still have rivers running through it in the springtime. Yeah.
Just like a Brad Pitt.
Yes, but no fly fishing.
So let's not get too distracted. I agree that facility.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Zoom people, anything for Don?
No, I'm all set.
Great. I was gonna ask, I want to ask all the elementary people, now that we are one-to-one devices all the way down, right? This is something that we talked about since I've been
All the
on
way
the
to
board.
pre-K.
Do we really, do we need one-to-one, all this sort of stuff? Obviously, with the pandemic, the one-to-one is necessary. It seems insane to even say it. Should the pandemic lift and we are not under constant threat of remoteness, do you see us being one-to-one devices forever, or do you see it
So
going
I would
back
kind
in
of
time?
throw that question there because Dunn School has been one-to-one devices well before the pandemic.
Yeah.
And so it has become a part of what we do. So if when we finally emerge from the pandemic, yes, I would continue because that's what we did well prior to it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, but the pandemic is what led to one-to-one there.
I think that's for me. I guess I'm a little conflicted, to be honest, because I see the wonderful things that kids have been able to do with the technology. I see that it has opened up a lot of avenues for instruction and approaching our content and our curriculum in different ways, which has definitely been beneficial. I think a lot of our kids are very accustomed to interacting with the screen. So I think in a lot of ways, the interactive nature of it is really nice. But I, on the other hand, also strongly believe that young children need the hands-on experience. And so I don't know that we can do justice to both effectively. So I guess I see both sides. Yeah. I do think that we live in a technology-rich world. And I think one of the things that always surprises me is the first week of kindergarten this year, last year. We talked a lot about how we really would have to ramp up using the technology with the kids. And they came in and showed us how to do it. So I mean, I think if we were to continue to have access to that technology, I could really see us doing some pretty innovative things. But I don't want that to be at the cost of the real collaborative work.
Use them as often as they do, let's say, 5 up. I don't think that's appropriate for 5 to 8-year-olds. Having them has been helpful. Like, for example, we transitioned to the MBA assessment a couple of years ago, so each student has a device for that purpose.
Right.
Great. Teaching them new ways to use technology that are more educational and less recreational is good too. So teaching them how to learn, use different platforms to do books, things like that has been very helpful. We also use them for a lot of our interventions and response interventions. So I think they have a place for us right now. Would we always have to have one device for every kid to do what we do? I don't know. I mean, if we were going to have remote snow days and things like that, we would, but it's having come from the middle school world, we're not as dependent upon having one-on-one. But it's been helpful, right? The kid would vote yes on that one.
It'll definitely require a big discussion when the time comes.
Yeah, I mean, we heard from Megan, it seems like we're gonna have to create some sort of capital fund or whatever for device replacement. And I think we're gonna have to think about, are we replacing every device in the district every 4 years? Are we doing 30% of the devices every 3 years or whatever? I think we're gonna have to have a pretty sophisticated plan for that. And so I think we do need to try to look 5 years out and, does every kindergartner have a device in their hand every day? All the time or
And I would
not?
say pre-K would not. That would be the one grade level that I would say in my building that wouldn't need that. I think they would be content with, a certain number per classroom to use as station work and things like that. Right now, they're one-to-one because they needed them to do the remotes, but that would be a grade level we can cut back.
The CRF grant sort of allowed us to do what we want and expand the program. But a lot of this rests of the ED 279, where you get X number of dollars per child per device. And so what MDOE does with that in the future. You know, we might be put in a position that, yeah, okay, you want K1, 2, 3 computers, but you may well be flipping the whole bill with no. So that's why I say it's going to require a big discussion the next year or two on where we have
Big
to.
dollars too, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not a small.
No, absolutely not.
No, it
What
isn't.
what do we spend, 1.1 billion?
Yeah.
Devices this
Yeah.
year?
Yeah.
One plug that I would put in, I think something that's attractive is that K-2 became the dumping ground for old technology.
Right, I remember that. yeah.
And one of the things that I have worked really hard with my staff is getting them to like technology again. If you have the old technology that doesn't work, or everything keeps breaking, the teachers sort of throw their hands up and say, why bother? You know, I can't even get a whole group of kids on to do something. And I think that would be the hardest place to go back to because we've made such. I don't think we necessarily need to be one-to-one, but I do think as we develop that long-term plan, we do consider and purchase, you know, technology part of that is actually functional. I think we just got rid of, I say that because I think we just got rid of the white MacBook. Like, you know, finally sent them to the technology place, the real.
All right, anything else for Dunn before we transition into Russell? All right, let's do it.
Right, you can move on to the side if you like. Recognition and celebration, as Jeff talked about, that return to 5 days a week has been so great for the littles, the K-2 students at Russell School, as well as the bigs. I think that has been a real morale lifter for us. Hybrid was really tough, and so we were chomping at the bit to get back into a 5-day routine. You heard Jeff and Paula talk about this, the overwhelming flexibility from students, staff, and family. You know, we have seen some pretty unprecedented situations lately, and everybody just is willing to rally around the needs of kiddos and of their overall success. Even the families, you know, if a family comes and has a need that we haven't really seen in the past, we have people that are, you know, coming out of the woodwork to support them, and families supporting their kiddos at home, trying to help us fill in some of those gaps that exist. Observable resilience with staff and students. This year, I will say, has been the hardest of the pandemic. I don't think we were anticipating that or expecting it, but it's sort of what we have been dealt. A couple of unforeseen things have come our way. We lost our guidance counselor this year. That was a really hard hit for our staff at an already difficult time. But, you know, again, rallying as a community to be supportive of one another and really helping us to continue to move forward. We continue to see increased collaboration between staff members. Kiddos are coming to us and they came to us in a place this year that we didn't anticipate at all of our levels. That has required us to open our classroom doors and to go to the teacher across the hall who teaches the grade level below us, or for some going to the grade level above to get some resources. How do you do that? We've never had to do this before. What has worked for you? What works when you do this with kiddos? That has been really great for morale. I think it also has helped us to sort of build that school-wide community. And then the addition of the general education social worker, that has been huge this year. We are not, her caseload, we have Abby Beaumont as well. We have not maxed out her caseload at this point, not because there is not a need for it, but with not having a guidance counselor currently, she has really stepped up to facilitate a lot of the pieces that Margaret was doing before. And then also providing support to classes and classroom teachers to help. Our first goal last year was to develop the systems and strategies to mitigate the disruption and challenges caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Certainly, we upheld all of our health and safety guidelines, but the big piece for us was the shift to the hybrid learning model. How do you do that with 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds? That was really tough. What do we prioritize for learning in person? What do we prioritize for learning at home? The need to teach children executive functioning skills so that they could take their device home and connect to their classes and complete work in the remote setting, whether that be at home with a grandparent in a daycare. That was a big challenge for us. And then finding things that were engaging to them. Kids love to play on their iPad. When we're asking them to write us a story on an iPad, they're like, no, thank you. So, we learned that was something we had to do in person, and some of the things that we were doing in person, we had to shift to remote learning. Our communication and work with the local daycares went up exponentially. Daycare providers calling and say, how do we troubleshoot, this problem, the kid can't get on, or the Zoom link isn't working. We tried this didn't work. What would you recommend? Those sorts of things. We rallied behind that, and I think we had very little disruption to that hybrid learning model, which was really encouraging because of all the time.
And if you had to estimate,
yeah,
I know of your head, so I'm not asking this, but what percentage of the kids were in a daycare setting versus like a home-based setting? Or virtual?
That's hard for me to do.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot. It just occurred to me. I don't know if it's 50 or 25 or 75, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think the formal daycare setting, probably about maybe half of our kids were sort of in that position. A lot of like the rec center, they increased their capacity. They provided all daycare, which they don't typically do. So that sent more than we would typically send to the daycare setting. A lot of kids though were sort of wherever they could be for the day.
Yeah.
That might be in their bedroom. That might be at grandma and grandpa's house. Or we had children in daycares in other towns, who were following different schedules. But I would say probably half of our students were in a formal daycare.
So we're going remote or hybrid, and instead of gathering in the Russell School, they're gathering in a daycare center.
That's correct.
That's helpful information.
Next slide, please. So Jeff talked a lot about this, and Paula too, the social emotional learning. The first thing that we did, the benefit to the hybrid schedule was the opportunities that we had to collaborate as staff on Wednesdays. So with Wednesday being a fully remote day for everybody, we were able to really dig in and do a lot of our grade level planning and some professional development during that time. Where we started was sort of unpacking that CASEL framework and really providing staff with several hours of good PD around what that framework looked like. What are those competencies? What is CASEL looking at? Teachers naturally provide social emotional learning opportunities, but rarely do they have time to sort of go back and look at what is it like, what is the actual underpinning that exists there? And so we spent a lot of time doing that. And then we built on that foundation opportunities that classroom teachers could do both in person and remotely to support that work. And I think Paula had said, you know, a lot of that work, there's the formal teaching, you know, those pieces, but then there's a lot of that work that happens sort of in the moment, on the fly. And that was the hardest hurdle, I think, for us to get over, was making the connection between here are these really great strategies, and here's how we implement them in that moment. And here's the language that we can use with kids. Here's the, you know, the 1 or 2 or 3 strategies in this area that we can actually give that kids can actually implement. We used a lot of the resources from the CASTLE framework. And then we also used some of the resources that came from the Department of Education's SEL for Me, sort of just pulling, you know, from various places. Simultaneously, we did have our guidance counselor and our TLC ed tech, it's literally what it sounds like. It's somebody on staff who sort of swoops in and provides kids with that little bit of extra whatever they need. They've come in and they're teary. That person swoops them up and, you know, helps them get to a good place for learning. You know, it was a bad night at home last night and they can't, you know, seem to move on from that. That person swoops in, reminds them of some strategies that they can use, and then, you know, gets the kiddo back to learning, and then gets the guidance counselor or the social worker involved, you know, to be able to follow up with that kiddo. Those 2 individuals, in conjunction with the greater staff, really developed the framework that we would use this school year to provide that tier 1 instruction. And that was a really good accomplishment for us. And our last goal was around students who were scoring proficient on the DRA. This was probably the biggest gut punch for us because we felt like we were busting our bottoms to, you know, get kids where they needed to be. You know, we had conversations every week about sort of how we were going to approach. And it just, at the end of the year, it seemed like we were feeling like kids had more skills than this data showed. If we think about sort of the time component, you know, when we look at the days that we were able to be with kiddos, you know, if we were to say, you know, look at the end of the year data, but go back to the 2nd trimester benchmark, that number shoots up a lot. I mean, it shoots up 25% actually. If we were looking at end of trimester 2 data benchmarks at the end of the year, then we were at 76% proficient. But Amanda and I had a lot of conversation with our teacher leaders that we felt strongly we were not going to change our benchmarks for this time, because as nasty as this looks, we really wanted a clear picture of where kids were in comparison to where they would typically be. And you know, we didn't really want to sugarcoat that. We want to be really transparent that this is the amount of kids who are passing the end of the trimester benchmark.
So, just so I understand what you just said out loud.
Yeah.
In the middle of a global pandemic where you saw the kids half the time that you normally see them, and there's a general and heightened total anxiety for everybody involved, we basically kept things the same.
We did.
Seems pretty good to me.
I agree. It's just hard to
I just say you gotta manage expectations.
I know.
Like, that seems pretty good to me.
And we saw the same thing in our NUIA data, to be honest. You know, at the number of students that are proficient, closer to 70% of that assessment, continued to be the same at the end of the year. So, you know, there's a little bit of fluctuation, but essentially, you're right. The kiddos who came in that place, we kept those kids moving in that forward direction. I have no doubt that every kid made progress. And I think that is something that we have talked about a lot. Every kid at Russell School moved forward. but could they meet those end of the year benchmarks? No. This year is a little bit of rinse and repeat. You know, it's the same story, just a little bit different. So, you know, this year the guidelines, the health and safety guidelines change every 3.5 minutes. You know, and so as a school, we are constantly adapting to those, trying to make sure that we have all of our bases covered. And then, you know, just constantly updating and checking and adjusting our plans. This year with our social emotional goal, you know, really we're looking at the implementation of the tier 1 guidance, or the tier 1 social emotional learning rather. One of the big things that we did at the end of the year is we decided to remove the technology special that was in our schedule and replace it with guidance. We felt that students did have enough screen time in their life. They didn't need more of that. And during a global pandemic, we probably could ramp up some of that social emotional work. So that curriculum or that framework that we put together last year, we started to implement this year. That felt really good. It feels really good because every week kids are getting a dedicated 40 minutes to that, in addition to whatever their classroom teacher is doing. So we feel like we really wrapped around that quite a bit. And we're coming back up. You know, we're looking at the growth using the DRA again, because that's our standby tool. That's what we're using, and we're able to see what kiddos know. And we hope that we're going to do a little better. Our current challenges, the time and effort required to uphold the health and safety guidelines. With everything changing, we are spending a lot of time having conversations so that it's transparent to everybody. As educators, we struggle to balance the pandemic priorities. I think Craig has done a wonderful job this year, you know, really outlining, you know, our goals. You know, we want to keep everybody safe. We want to keep everybody healthy. You know, we want to really focus on those social emotional learning pieces, and then, you know, then we're going to get to the academics. As educators, we like to skip to number 3, right? That's where we live. And so for us to sort of flip flop the way we do business is hard, and it takes constant repetition and reminders that that is what they're doing. And I think we're seeing the benefit of that at this point. Another challenge is the inconsistencies created by absences, and this is staff and students. Jeff's analogy of 1 step forward or 2 steps forward, 1 step back. You know, I had some teachers this week who were really struggling. They had done some assessment and they felt like they were expecting more and anticipating more. And we, you know, sort of used the analogy of being stuck in the mud. You know, we're spinning our tires. Every once in a while, we get a little bit of traction and we can move. But you know, that's hard for us because we have a different set of kids in front of us. Sometimes we're out for long periods of time. And it's not just school-based. I think that's sort of a missed opportunity for us to think about, because I think teachers, the only reason that they're not at school is not because they're sick or they have COVID or whatever. You know, in the world around us, I'll use myself as an example. There's COVID at my 2-year-old's daycare, and because they can't wear masks, my daycare is closed, and it is closed for 10 days. There is no wiggle room. You know, so we're coming to school and we have these hurdles and these obstacles, but we also have them in our personal lives. And so, you know, teachers are struggling with that. Staff are struggling with that because they want to be here and they want to be doing everything that they can, but life is really making that challenging. We talked about this 2 years in a row now. Math is something that we are really interested in looking at. We wanted to start that process. We were getting ready to start that process. And then came along, COVID, and we shut down, and that was not even on the radar. I think we tried some things the last couple of years. We piggybacked on Dunn School's adoption of MyMath and tried that out a little bit. You know, we really feel like we need to be thinking about this as a short-term goal, because we really would like to develop some consistency around math instruction. I talked a little bit about playground last year. Our playground is heavily used during our school day, and as soon as we close, the community comes. They actually like to come during the day, but they don't like it when we ask them to just go until the end of the day. But it is like the hub of the town. Everybody is there. The Little League is playing, kids are on the equipment. But that equipment is starting to deteriorate, and there are a lot of rusty spots now. You know, I think we really need to be mindful of updating some of that equipment from a safety perspective. You know, because we don't want to. And then attracting and retaining high quality staff and substitutes and techs. You know, with COVID, our sub pool is very small. We have 2 subs who come in regularly for us. On a day like today, when there are 6 staff members out, that's really challenging because we have to make some hard decisions. Jeff talked about this, and I will echo what he said. When there are not enough bodies to be in classrooms, we then have to reallocate staff. The place that we do that from, unfortunately, is response to intervention. So it's a hard thing to do because we look at, you know, the gaps that exist with kiddos and the support that they need. And then we're pulling that out because we need to cover, you know, a few classes for the day to make sure that we have enough bodies. You know, so substitutes are a big thing. We have been pretty good with staffing at Russell School the last few years. We haven't had a lot of turnover. This year we have a little bit happening. And so just, you know, I don't think that's, you know, a huge concern, but, you know, just making sure when we're getting people in. Our partnerships, certainly our families, you know, with the littles, that has been huge. We understand that, you know, when something like a remote day happens, that's putting a big burden on them. We ask them to help their students engage in learning when they're at home. We understand that they are not self-sufficient, you know, and so we appreciate that partnership. We continue to use our foster grandparents. We've been doing that remotely, but we do still have grandpa upcoming, and that's a wonderful opportunity for not only our kids, but for grandpa who lives in our community. We're continuing to partner with Logos for literacy professional development. That has really been helpful and beneficial to our staff as we prioritize instruction. The last couple of years, just sort of having somebody who can say, you know, like, we can bridge these pieces by doing X, Y, and Z. Norway Savings Bank, shout out to them. They do the pocket change for Patriots. I know every once in a while that'll come up in one of our publications, but I just got a check in the mail for $500 last week. So, you know, that is awesome because we can use that money to support our kiddos. Right now we're looking at using actually this check in the last one that they sent to look for some outdoor sensory paths. And then Memorial and Dunn School, I hope one of the things that you will hear tonight is just how cohesive the 3 buildings are. I think we understand that they start with Jeff, they come to us, they go back to Jeff. We really want to do everything we can to provide everybody the same experience. The same is true between Russell and Memorial. I think I talked to Amanda more than I talked to my wife. Just, you know, morning conversations about here's what my day looks like, how it's yours. And then, you know, these things have come up. I think that has been wonderful to provide.
Any questions?
Thanks, Danny. First, I think, speak for the entire board, I would say, Thibodeau, I'm sure that you're very close with her, and that's very traumatic for your community, so.
And who do you go
recognize that.
to when something like that happens? You go to your guidance counselor. And that was.
I can't imagine what that was like. I know it was terrible, so.
Thank you.
I don't have anything, that made sense. Anyone else have anything for Danny?
Or then I'll ask just because I know you free to share. So the social worker,
Yes,
how many days?
1.5.
Considering that she's taking on the role as basically guidance.
Yeah, so she has probably 75% of her caseload is full and filling, but we are using another chunk of her time to support the gen ed, things that just don't.
Anyone on Zoom have anything?
Nope.
Just want to make sure they're still there. See, so, thanks, Jim. All right, thanks, Danny.
Yeah, no problem.
I just always have that nagging doubt that they got cut off.
Hi, everybody. It is my unique pleasure to be your fifth presentation. Good news is, as you can see, like the three of us, especially about politics, we have a lot of common themes. So I won't belabor things that you've heard a few times before, but just know that they're also true for Memorial School. So, and nice to see you all. So, like Danny and Jeff said, school was meant to be 5 days a week for 5 to 8 year olds, and we are so glad to be back almost all the time doing our instruction in Memorial School. Again, we also appreciate the addition of the general ed social work services. That has been a wonderful asset. We have a day and a half a week as well at Abby Beaumont's time. I would say her caseload for us is maybe not a lot of children, but several children with a lot of need. So she's been able to help us kind of work with that population, and we are adding to it now as well. Now that we've kind of got some friends to a place where we don't require as much daily time and attention on those 1.5 days. Big shout out to the Memorial School families. Like Danny said, you know, kindergartners don't do remote instruction on their own. That takes Grammy, mom, dad, daycare provider, big brother, someone sitting with them and working them through what they've done for their online learning, whether it's when we were in hybrid last year, or even if we had a remote day a little while ago. We really appreciate all they do for us in that capacity and in many, many ways. My school improvement team has gained some members this year. We're up to 5 contributing members, parents of kiddos at Memorial, as well as my teacher leaders. So I also greatly appreciate their dedication, and they helped us develop the goals that we're going to talk about today. And the Memorial School staff, I mean, every day we're adapting. They have to be resilient. They're problem solving together to make the best of this that we can for the school experience for our kiddos. So they're wonderful. I'm so grateful when they come back in every day after the day before sometimes. They're adaptable. They're always willing to help. We call ourselves Team Memorial, and I'm just so fortunate to be here. So big shout out to Team Memorial. For last year's goals, we hoped to, oh, sorry, Brett, we advanced. We hope to increase the percentage of students that would perform at proficient levels or above in reading, just like Danny, on the DRA. More students were proficient at the end of the year, but 6% more. That's not our typical data in years leading up to the pandemic, but it was growth. What we really learned is that you really need consistent 5-day-a-week instruction in literacy and in mathematics to make the kind of growth that we would like to see. However, kids did grow and learn just at a slow pace. And like the Danny's data, you know, kids did make growth. We were proud of them and their accomplishments. Just we're hard on ourselves because we want to see that consistent level of growth go up and up every year. For our second goal, We wanted to look at increasing the number of students who performed at proficient levels in math as measured by our common math assessments. Again, the hybrid instructional model did slow our rate of progress, but students did learn and grow in math last school year. And in some concepts, they did quite well. Some, like place value for our first and second graders, was really challenging with the every other day in-person instruction. So we're working on that this year to remediate some of those learning challenges from last year. Our third goal last year was to expand partnerships and improve communication, understanding, support, and engagement in K-2 education in New Gloucester. I would say that was a goal that we really met. We worked with the New Gloucester Recreation Department and their new program and with our local daycares. Really built new pathways of communication between like the folks that own the daycares and Sarah Rodriguez at the New Gloucester Recreation Department. And we're able to really partner to get them what they needed at their sites, make sure we can answer their questions. A lot of them had me on speed dial. We were able to communicate quickly. So-and-so can't get online. What do we need to do? Here's the code. So they were wonderful partners last year. We really appreciate everything for the students at Memorial School. And we did host a family event virtually last year. We had an author night with author Marty Kelly, and we had about 37 families, I think, in attendance. That was really fun. It was great for us because we got to see a lot of Memorial School alumni on there with their parents and their brothers and sisters. So we're hoping maybe to do something like that again this winter, in the absence of the opportunity to do a lot. And our last goal last year, like the other schools, was to look at that SEL and making sure that we implemented a plan for that. Last year, we increased our guidance instruction to be weekly. Katie Banks was our counselor last year, and she was doing 20-minute virtual lessons with each class and then a follow-up on Seesaw, so families could be kind of looped into that. She and our folks in response to intervention for behavior also had connection clubs for kids when they were remote, so they could log in and they eat breakfast and talk about topics and have a chance to have that social interaction even when they were remote. And just like the other schools, we utilize that CASEL framework to build our lessons. So for this year's goals, a lot of them are the same. We're a Title I school, so we're sort of obligated to some of our goals. We have to have a reading and a math goal and also one around family engagement. So those are pretty consistent for us. The goals might change a little bit, but you'll see they come up year after year. So we are, again, looking to increase the number of students who demonstrate growth towards proficiency or above in reading as measured by the Developmental Reading Assessment or the DRA. We're also trying to find ways to best capture a year's worth of growth on our various assessments, so we can kind of report both of those measures to you next year. We're not sure how realistic it is to meet our pre-pandemic benchmarks in the same way we have. Trying real hard, but we'd also like to be able to say to you, this percentage of students made a year's growth from September. And I think with this year's conditions, making a year's worth of growth would be a great accomplishment because, like everyone has said, we're still facing a lot of challenges day to day. We also want to see kiddos grow in proficiency in mathematics. We'll assess those by their performance on the common math assessments. We hope to continue to expand those family connections and community partnerships in New Gloucester. We kind of added the family piece more explicitly this year. That was the feedback from my school improvement team. So we're kind of working on how do we connect with families and then how do we connect with daycares, the rec center, other communities, the library, other community partners. We have a couple other goals. We have an ambitious slate of goals. We also want to make sure that students feel welcome and included at school and are ready to learn. Dovetails with that SEL goal. And we want to make sure that when kiddos come to Memorial School, they're excited to come in and have their day with us and that they have the skills they need to be able to learn. And then like the other schools, we have a goal around making sure that we develop those systems and strategies to mitigate the impacts of COVID-19. So current challenges, again, kind of a repeat of my predecessors. I think it's hard this year because we have these 5 goals and we probably have other goals that kind of nest underneath them. And finding the time each day to put your energy in the right basket is really challenging. For example, last week I spent like 2.5 full days assisting our school nurse with retesting positive foods. So, your time is not necessarily spent in the things that I think are most important and enjoy the most. But we have to make sure we do those things to keep our students and our staff healthy and safe. So I think that's challenging for us because our days are not always our own and some of the things that we're doing are not what we think would best move students forward academically, socially, emotionally, but it's just to protect it. So, do what we have to do. We have had a real challenge with substitute teachers. I think I have one person who will substitute for us when she's wonderful, but she has a 2-year-old, so she can only substitute when she has childcare. Outside of that, we haven't had folks picking up our openings, which could be, I think tomorrow I have like 5 different, at least partial or full vacancies. So that's hard for us. And like Danny said, who do you take to fill the holes in the bucket? Sometimes it's me, sometimes it's my school counselor, sometimes it's our library ed tech, sometimes it's our response to intervention folks. But it's everyone that has an important job to do that day that they're not going to do because they're filling in for someone else because we have to make sure we have that coverage. So that's a lot of stress on the system, and we're doing our best in partnering, and we try to sort of evenly distribute the load so no one gets taken away from their own role that often, but it's tricky. And we do have a couple of ed tech vacancies at Memorial, one that's been open for a long time, one we just filled, so that was great. And then we have a vacancy in our TLC ed tech, so that's a hard vacancy to have, and especially in this year. So hopefully we'll get those filled. Danny talked a lot about the math program review and potential program adoption. It's been on our list for probably 3 years. And I know I was just in some PLC meetings with my teachers this afternoon, and we're just speaking again to the fact that we need consistency, we need some high quality instructional resources. So hopefully we can move forward with that, whether it's piloting some things for next year or full on review and program adoption. But that's been something we've been really trying to work on. Grade level transitions is kind of a tricky one. So how do we at Memorial School make sure that the staff at Dunstable understand, kind of the composition of the second grade class that we're sending? How do we let them know, here's the skills they're solid in, here's the skills that they're lagging in a little bit behind what we've sent you in the past. So that's going to be a big piece for us also on the other end with pre-K, making sure that we're ready to receive the pre-K students. And then, we get about 40 students from pre-K and about 20 students who've attended other programs or have been at home. So how do we help bridge that transition for those kiddos? We also have a playground that is in need of some updates. I think I'd like a nature scape, like Jeff talked about. I was hoping Diane was here, right? That sounds wonderful. And that's kind of what we'd like to do at Memorial. Our area that's like under the trees closest to the road, the equipment that's under there, it gets a lot of tree situations and all of that. We'd like to look at replacing some of that with some updated equipment. We've had 2 or 3 pieces of equipment that we had to take down because it was broken and we haven't replaced it. So we're looking for that. And we'd really like to go back to hosting family engagement activities that are safe and engaging. And Jeff spoke to that. Like we used to have 3 different family nights every year. We haven't been able to do that. We were able to do our ice cream social this fall, which was great. I'm hoping for a family event in the spring, maybe partially outdoors. But we feel, the staff and the families, I think, feel the loss of that gathering. I was talking to a family last week who wanted to plan a small gathering for their child's birthday. They're like, we don't know the other families because we haven't had a chance. They moved here last year and there's just not a way to interact with other families in the community. So we'd love to bring that back when it's safe and we're able to. And then in terms of partnerships, obviously our families, the rec department and the daycares. We also partner with Logos for our professional development and literacy. And we very much appreciate our communication and partnership with Russell and schools. And that is Memorial School in a nutshell. It's like when you hear it like the 4th time.
I think we could have, in some ways, had you guys all present together. So
Probably.
I
Maybe next year.
appreciate that the concerns. Anything for kids, high school bandy chorus kids, are they going to perform for the Memorial kids?
I don't
They're
think so.
not?
They have in the past, but they haven't since spring of 2020.
Because I just signed off on paperwork for Carol Clark, so.
No.
Yeah.
Maybe there's
I
one.
think you might be getting it. Yeah, I think you might be getting it. So.
That would be, we've had that in the past,
Yeah.
and we've had we've had things outside. The graduates came last year on the outside. We're open to it. We love a little concert. The kids eat that up. So
That's the high school kids love going there. Little kids love having
I love seeing them because I remember them from middle school, where we were last week classes and all.
You get your fence. It's still not there.
No, we have some snow fence. No, not yet.
Anything else for Amanda? Or anybody that, oh, we're still here? Any big picture questions for the elementary levels or anything like that? Well,
Thank you.
let's not belabor the point. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you to everybody out there in Zoom land or TV for watching. That is the end of our agenda. Anything else?
Personnel committee, we do need to reschedule, so if you could stay for 2 or 3 minutes, we need to talk minutes.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Have a great night, and we'll see you for the business meeting next Wednesday.